like some of you. 5:30, I'll call the regular City of White Lakes Council meeting for Monday, June 9th, 2025, roll call please.
Mayor Scott,
Here.
Councilor Grant,
Here.
Darla, here, Atkins,
Here.
and Branson here.
All right, please answer.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Moving on to the consent agenda. Everybody had a chance to read through that. Any questions, comments, changes?
I've got a correction for the minutes from last week. It said that I was going to attend the summit, the Research Summit. I was just reading about the minute. I did not make a statement that I would be in. That's all it is. And I did not attend it. So the dean apparently can verify.
Yes, I can verify that with Sharon. Yeah, all amendments.
So you'll amend that,
Please.
and then we will, approve those at our next meeting with those changes. Moving on to the guests and citizens forum. Is there anybody that'd like to say anything? Hearing nothing, we'll move on to reports from staff, City Administrator Wyberg.
I don't have a whole lot, we're gonna get into a lot of conversation later, so I'll just hold. One big thing is we're gonna be attending down on Wednesday, we'll be at the Sickles County Garage, will be the preliminary meeting for if the city wants to get reimbursement for anything related to fire. So we'll be there from 1 to 4. All the panels are ready to get back up here for interviews and then the interviews for each day, so.
Thank you. Public Works Director Spencer.
Sure, several little topics I'll touch on. The road construction project out here on County 110. Is going as planned. They, had a few little snags and hurdles, but nothing they couldn't overcome. Jake could maybe touch more on the utility end of that when it gets to him, but I would expect up to another 2 weeks of the detour. From the sounds of it last Friday, they thought they were about 2 weeks for finishing up the first 3 intersections to get that portion of the road open again. Today we had curb cleanup started, I should say. Things went fine. People are utilizing it about like normal. Some people are putting items out that are not on the list, so if you have items that don't get picked up at your curb, please look at the list of items we are actually taking before you call and wonder why. But we'll continue tomorrow with brush leaves, tree branches, etc. That'll be tomorrow, and Wednesday will be the day the garbage truck comes around. Again, everything that gets picked up on Wednesday by the garbage truck has to be in a black plastic bag, tied, etc. With the garbage truck later. This past week, we received our shipment of trees that we purchased as part of the Midway project with the CN grant monies that we received. We're planting trees throughout the whole Birch Cove, Water Carnival, Midway area over there. We'll be planting about 20 trees ourselves along with the county. They'll be planting 20 trees along Kennedy Drive where the trees got taken down. On the north side of Kennedy. Pickleball courts, the coatings were completed last week or the week prior. We see the first shipment of parts today for the pickleball nets and tennis court nets that'll be put back up to go with the new coatings. So you'll see those open up here in the near future. The arena project is actually ahead of schedule. The new slab is poured. We have a meeting tomorrow, construction meeting tomorrow, and they'll discuss the time frame for the balance of the project as well as the installation of the boards, bleachers, etc. inside the new room. I think that's about it. Other than, will just be agenda items, I guess.
Thank you. Any public utilities director, Barrett?
All right, well, we'll start with the construction project. They replaced water lines, the way we have it set up, we want to come up Wyandotte, curve over, go into Yorkshire. And then do the same thing on Yorkshire, go over to the next intersection. We eliminated that, and I'll go straight across to the big 12-inch main, so that went well. We had 3 belts replaced in there, and water tower held up pretty good. Everyone did well with their water usage during the time, and it took a while. My guys got over there at 10 PM that day, that was last Thursday, so that was a long day for them. The only place we had an issue with was the hotel, they had no water for the whole day, but they made it through from what I understand. The, other than that, my guys have been spread pretty thin between keeping up with construction, locates. They've been pretty busy and get some overtime regarding that, so you're gonna see that when paychecks come around. But if you wanna talk to me about that, I'd be happy to sit down and talk to you, show you what they've been doing. Wastewater side, wastewater plant's been running, we haven't had time to run sludge yet, even though by this time of year we normally do. Back to water side too, I know people have had some complaints about yellow water still in the system, that should be dissipating as time goes. It's just we've been so busy, we haven't had time to get out and flush hydrants here. So once things slow down a little bit, we anticipate putting an ad in the paper to flush hydrants and start moving sludge. So we're at on that.
Perfect, thank you, Dave.
Yep.
Moving on to the city attorney, Wiki, anything from you tonight?
No, Mayor, thanks.
Perfect, thank you. Moving on to reports from elected officials, Counselor Graham.
Nothing to report, I did attend the East Range, summit along with administrators. Library last week out at the Ridge, it was just kind of, public elected officials, administrators, just a group of people get together and hear a lot about housing issues and just making some connections. I did take a bunch of notes, which I forgot to grab and bring with me, but it was an informational meeting. I'm gonna try to continue to do those a couple times a year. That's all I have.
Perfect, thank you. Counselor Graham.
Not much other than, we attended the meeting. And I and Council Ekman attended the East Range PD meeting tonight. Got a potential hire on a new police officer for our department. And also a possible purchase on a used canine vehicle. It's gonna save the city some money buying used one as opposed to spending the money on them. It's about all I got.
So if you hire a new officer, then we can pull the staff or?
I believe so, yeah, the addition of one.
Okay.
Yeah, because we lost one that went to county. Or no, not to the county, to, Everett. Two, yes. And then one went to the county.
Sounds good.
Retired, so yeah.
What's that?
Then one retirement.
Yeah, Tim
Lots of
Jerry.
still.
And that was brought up at the meeting too, that they were gonna drop the, listing of the deputy chief. Because it's now the chief and 2 sergeants, so.
Thank you. Update, Counselor Ekman.
Just the same as Councilor Jarlow. This one of the Eastern Power Board meeting or Eastern Public Safety Board meeting and some good things are happening.
Happy to hear it. Counselor Matson.
Nothing from me, thanks.
Sounds good, thank you. Saturday, I attended the Ranger Snowmobile ATV Club's grand opening of their multi-use trail. It was a very nice event. The trailhead is just outside of, town. So yeah, thank you to them for putting on the nice event and then overseeing the completion of that trail. So if you're looking for a nice new trail to use, suggest you use that one. But other than that, nothing else. Moving on to old business, there was some recommendations that we just follow up on a few things from the past that we've discussed. There was an ask that we, swing back to the garbage bag versus stickers kind of, discussion. So just providing context to that. Previous council had expressed interest in moving towards a sticker option rather than using, the yellow bags. Due to residents being concerned about the quality of those bags. So that led the previous administrator to look into that, kind of been reviewing, notes, emails, those different types of things. Looks like it ended off, with some issues finding a sticker that met all the criteria that we're kind of looking for, so. Something that was big enough, something that wasn't able to be removed, and then it was waterproof. And then some finding of a vendor for the availability and pricing of that, added some issue to that. So that's kind of where it's at this point. And then kind of with, the new city administrator jumping on board, and all the projects and getting used to kind of how the cities run, all the arena project, the water project, all the roads, grants, bookkeeping type stuff that was, needing to be caught up on, just kind of the sticker thing has been kind of put on the back burner, at the moment. And then just touching base with, city staff, I would just suggest that we revisit, kind of the sticker discussion at the end of summer, once most of these big projects are taken care of. And then at that point, we can, direct city staff to maybe start looking more into, that again. Anything else for you?
No, I went through the email and I see how the word started, or got left off in March or whatever. We were able to go for quotes. That's something we can pick back up, but yeah, I'd like to get a couple of these projects under about here, that was funded in that sort of roads and park later. You know, in one of the smaller priority projects, but you guys don't mind.
And then James is a good resource to, send out issues, so.
Right, yeah, we didn't, Kenny and I met from like first week I was here and, like, we did talk a little bit about the sticker project. But, and like you say, we're about top and we're trying to find the right sticker to make it through the weather and it's gonna fold over the neck, and that kind of stuff. This is small project and we did that project. Something.
Any further questions or comments or anything regarding that?
No, I just wanted to see if that was still something we were looking at changing over to, and I know we only had so many of the yellow bags left, so I don't know if we
They were,
had plenty or we ordered more, so yeah, it just seemed like a couple of the items. Kind of, we hadn't discussed for a while, that were just left unfinished, so,
For sure.
yeah, if that's something we're still gonna talk about, that can wait, it's not a high priority,
Right,
we talked about in the fall.
but still, yeah, important, to just know that the quality of the little bigs is of a concern, so at some point we'll get back on addressing that. But just taking a little bit of a backseat with all the grants and funding and projects and those types of things that are more time sensitive. And then 10 so is that all further discussion, questions on that? Hearing nothing, we'll move on to 10.2. Just following up on the trailer park ordinance for the planning and zoning. So regarding that, Dean and I have been chatting with Matt Royce, our zoning officer. He's been working on, speaking with the owner of the trailer court. Sounds like he's had some success in having some discussions with those folks. And then, it sounds like there's about 10, 12 of the worst trailers that were in there. We're taking out, since our discussions, sounds like there's some newer ones that might be brought in. Doesn't sound like that will happen for a while. Matt kind of sounded hopeful about the newer type ones being brought in. He doesn't know exactly what those will look like, so that sounds like that's a priority for him, is reaching out to those folks to figure out what they're planning on bringing in. That sounds like they've taken, but the worst ones out.
They've really cleaned it up out there, if you go for a drive, there's a lot that they've taken out. They're working on it, they've really been.
Yeah,
so the same individual wanted in forms or in our injunction order, and also in giving, so they're further ahead with the ones that are giving and over there, supposedly. We have been coordinating with Matt, so we're gonna see what his intentions are. Fortunately, or unfortunately for him, maybe, White Lakes has done an ordinance, this particularly for that trailer park. So we'll be following that, and it's gonna come up through planning, so.
They're gonna bring it back up.
Pardon?
Are they gonna bring it back to the council?
It'll have to be, yeah, but when you watch it, absolutely.
Because it stalled at the council, if I remember correctly, from the last time.
It needs to be good parts of the space.
That's exactly what the individual proposes to do down there.
Oh, okay.
Expanding it potentially, doubling size versus what it is now, that's not, you know, there's all those questions you've got to come to council with. For the plan going first, but we do have a good one, it's a getting back and then conservative.
And I think when we first brought it up, it was because the old ordinance or the current ordinance that we have, it wasn't being followed as it was, so that's what prompted the discussion of amending that ordinance. So I guess, you know, if the ordinance is gonna be enforced as written, great, then, you know, we'll just, because it wasn't being enforced for a lot of those factors. So if it's, the ordinance is fine and they're gonna start enforcing it, it doesn't need to be amended, but just the issue came forward that we weren't following the ordinance anyway, and it was very outdated, so. Go with that one and enforce what's in that one then. It doesn't need to be a discussion, you know, as far as fixing the ordinance.
I think we made a good faith effort, but we only told the worst.
Yeah, it's a nice,
And one are, and they're happy.
Yeah, also, talking with Matt, as kind of things progress, we learn more about kind of what their intentions are for the specific type of, motor trailer, module home, whatever they plan to bring in. And then, just been talking with Matt, we can kind of talk about like a new ordinance as it, as we progress with things. When we initially, Jill and I had shot it down, I came up with alternative, wordings, so I could, I said that the previous city administrator, that's not like a government, planning and zoning commission. So I can plan on resending that to them, or just different ideas that I thought of that were, that I thought would be a little bit better in my mind. Just based on kind of the research and things that I've looked into, following that, so, I can send that their way if they wanna, come up with a new one or whatever. But that's kind of where that is currently. Nice to see that they have taken off the worst of the worst in there, regarding the kind of more dilapidated trailers, so. Moving on to the full school potential rezoning, we chatted about that last couple meeting, I went before. Just in talking about, takes time for things to be rezoned, and kind of maybe jump in on that prior to, homes being demolished. So that we're kind of ahead of the game rather than trying to catch up. I'm talking with Matt, it sounds like, and you, it sounds like it's currently zoned as R3, so it is. Zoned as.
Well, right, that is on our three, so it would. It's residential, you
How
know,
many residential zones do you have in town?
I think it's pretty well, there's a mobile home, trailer park. Zone, there's the R3 zone, there's a commercial zone, there's a conservation zone.
Isn't there, I think that, I thought there was something, because I remember there was a discussion a while back on the fire pit. That people could have fire pits if they were, was it an R3 and R2, and they couldn't if they weren't.
There's R1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
Okay.
So single family, mobile homes, 2 family, you know, townhouses. And multifamily, you know, and then it gets into businesses and stuff. The definition behind all that is what I was looking for earlier today. On the fire player, so.
Okay.
What does R three, like,
R3 is single
Single
family.
family, okay.
I didn't know if it was like a special.
No, so, yeah. So we're looking at, what I'm trying to do is get the definition of, okay, so what does that mean? Because there's single family, but obviously they're colored differently.
Yeah.
And some vary on, depending on the size of the lot, like in town versus at Lakeview or stuff like that, there's.
And they coincide with, neighbors' homes, so.
No, well, definitely, we should leave it residential, but until we get that information on what the difference is, can we hold off on that?
Well,
You know, I was just hoping it was at least not zoned as a school anymore.
Well, yeah,
Just
for
make
sure.
That was cleared up, and then, I mean, based on, do it need to be multifamily, does it need to be, you know, could be duplexes, so I mean, I don't know if that's a discussion we might wanna have just to see what all.
Well, that's
could be
what I'm saying,
included in
too.
that site. So it doesn't have to be a single family, home. Maybe there's more of a need for a duplex or a fourplex, or, you know, something like that, so that
maybe
just,
outside.
yeah, just be a discussion we might wanna have just to figure out what the biggest need is, and we have a housing study that was done less than 2 years ago, for the whole East Range, and specifically each community had their own done. And then based on all these meetings we've been having with the housing committee and the surveys that they're doing, I mean, it gives you a really good idea of what people in each town, and each town is different, of what they're looking for, what people say they're looking for. So maybe just look at all that material before we change any zoning, but.
But at least it's residential now.
Yes, so
Yeah,
at least
it's
it's single family to start with, but
But you could go to R5 or R7, just big utilities, stuff like that, again. That's fine, then.
yeah. Look at those, but I'm just glad it's not still zoned for a school, and that at least it's residential if someone was interested in. In building a home there, it's ready for that at least.
So yeah, I think if you wanna keep looking into what each of the different.
Yeah, I'm trying to get better recognition, but.
Yeah, once we get a better understanding of that, we can, put it on a future agenda, just to discuss what we might want. Zoning wise and do that, things like that, you know, kind of zoning place and. And go through that.
And then when we are ready to put it on the agenda for discussion, I can provide some information also on the results from housing study and from the different meetings that we've had, just what it says our area is.
Who did the study, sure?
I don't remember the name of the company that did it, LOI or Loki, LOCI, I think it's Loki.
Okay, and was it paid for by all the communities in Rangeley?
But there was a grant, yeah, and then I think each community, I think by Wabbit got a grant, but each community had to put in just a little bit extra to do their own individual city. And I think most of that money came out of the joint powers budget, I don't think each city had to contribute anything extra. I think we used the joint powers budget since it was for all 4 communities to make up the difference from what the grant by Wabbit already got. So yeah, I can just make sure we all have that information. Give it to Dean to provide to everyone.
I'll find it. Okay,
Yeah, and then from the different housing meetings and the workshop that we attended with the Minnesota Housing Institute, we can give you the information from that too.
Yeah, once we get to that, if you could, send it over to Dean, so that we can all have it, will help us in making a good informed decision on what we do with that, so thanks, Sherry. Any other questions or comments regarding that? Hearing none, we'll move on to 10.4, prior request from Jim Huckey for the mountain bike trail from the May 12th meeting. Just in that meeting, we kind of talked about mountain bike trail being important and him willing to kind of do what was needed to make sure there was a trail for people to use. His request was a letter to a lead from White Lakes to use their property for developing trails. And Justin with me attending that snowmobile ATV clubs event. And then taking part in some of their grant meetings and documentation and things like that. There's a lot that goes into making trails and getting approval. Forestry service involved in trails and those different types of things. So just in my mind, I think it would make more sense if Jim is wanting to fix up the bike trail and do these things on his own. That he kind of reach out to those agencies, like the lead, the Forest Service. And then I think it just makes more sense for the council to provide with like a letter of support to those agencies. Kind of take some of the liability off the city since he's an employee, which is kind of. If he's doing something on behalf of the city, and he's doing all of it, which is honestly questions.
Yeah, and I don't know what his, I know he said he doesn't want anything from White Lakes, he just, can you do it? It's like, well, it's not even our land, I just felt like it was unfinished, like he was asking us like, hey, can you guys say, we don't care if we have mountain bike trails in White Lake, so I just didn't know if he was waiting for an answer, like, can I go ahead and ask him, it's not our White Lake's property, so.
Right.
Yeah, we don't wanna get involved in the particulars, but I didn't know if he was kind of waiting for a. You know, like, hey, do you care if I do this or not, which he doesn't need our permission, I guess. But-
Right. So yeah, I can find a touch base with them. We have, an HOA meeting in a couple weeks, I think, but I can make sure to touch base with them, just to see kind of what he wants. But I just think if he's an individual that wants to do it, I think us providing some sort of letter of support would make more sense rather than
Yeah.
us saying like, hey, can the city do this, and then a resident does it up by themselves as opposed to some sort of. That's
Yeah,
kind
that
of
makes sense.
where my brain was. So, any other questions or discussion regarding that? Yeah, I can touch base with Jim Rice. Week or two. All right. Moving on to new business. 11.1, Bolton Main County Road 665, Highway 110, engineering, construction report. Jake is here from Bolton Main to speak to that.
Well, good evening, everybody. So in front of you, we have a proposal to provide construction administration services for the County Road 665 and the 110 reconstruction. And what this proposal entails is we would provide our engineering staff and our site supervisors to, during the construction administration phase, oversee the construction for just the utility portions as it's a joint project with the county. So we'll be on site to attend meetings, we'll be there to prepare change orders, written directives. We'll review shop drawings from the contractors, do all that work. We also conduct field staking for locating utilities, so that'd be putting stakes in the ground for alignments that were designed by Bolton and Mink. That includes water main, sanitary sewer, and any other feature that's included in the design. We also provide construction observation support, which is photo documentation, working with the contractor on alignments, any design changes that need to happen, and we work with your staff directly to make sure that those are reconciled immediately. We also include project updates in council meetings as part of this, along with just current notifications to the city staff. Lastly, we conduct a as-built documentation preparation that provides you guys with GPS coordinates of all the valves, T's, Y's, anything that's subsurface, you'll get an as-built document on. That is GPS for your own record that you can locate in the field. So to do the service, we provide it as a hourly estimated fee, and we're estimated based off of what is presented for this project in the timeline from Northland. That would be around $80,000 to do this service.
Anything to add to that, Director Barrett?
Well, my guys are busy enough keeping up with the locates and doing what we can for construction, exercising valves for shutdowns. I think it's good to have an engineer supervising a project like this, much like we did for the last project we did for Andover and South Oak. There's a lot of infrastructure going into place, especially when we hit 665, the water and sewer mains going in are not covered by the county, as he said, so it'll be good to have them watching. Making sure things are packaged properly, attached properly and all that.
You said, Jake, that there would be GPS where the
Correct.
valves, T's, and
Yep.
whatever else are.
Yep, so as part of the service, actually, with the lead service line program, you guys developed a GIS site of your water main infrastructure. And while our inspectors are out there, we'll be updating that GIS site to provide you the physical location, so you can go out there with your smartphone and be within about 5-6 feet. It's the tolerance on that is going down to 1/2 inch though, because it is survey grade. Yep. So you'll be able to locate pretty well.
So is that, you hand over drawings to Jake and his crews, or you just have reports written out that you find this at this location?
You'll actually you can receive paper copies and electronic copies to provide both.
So make it field usable for them?
Exactly. Yep. And all this information will be uploaded to your GIS site as well. So over time, we'll just start to see your infrastructure populated in real space. So,
I might add in, The lead service inventory we did last year as mandated by the state. We got part of the grant we received for that covered a GIS system that we log into. We can see a map of all of our infrastructure in town where it's located. That's good stuff. It'll be added to.
So tomorrow at 6 P M, VFW, 112 Kensington Drive, Lakes.
We'll look at that, and see what is done, what types of materials in there, where it's generally located, and stuff like that.
Any other questions for either of the? Council? Anything to add for meeting?
Not on top of that, I think you covered it pretty well, you projects underway, boots on the ground and then most holes.
We have the funds to be able to pay for the service, or?
That's coming up in the next couple of years.
Right, these fees would be eligible to include in the upcoming loans that we talked about as well, so.
No, it's good, as long as we can pay for it. Yeah, no other questions or comments regarding this, I'll ask for a motion to, approve this support we voted in.
I'll make that motion.
One second.
Okay, we have a motion from Councilor Grams, a second for support from, Councilor Jarvala, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Moving on to 11.2, Bolton Mink Westover Loop Change.
So as part of the construction project, Jake approached me as we've been working through the Westover designs. We are very close to completing those. I talked with our design team and we're targeting the 16th to turn that over. We had to go back and provide some revisions based off discussions. When talking with Jake, there was a design benefit to the city of looking at looping Westover into 110 from 665. Currently, it's on a dead end lane. It goes down to the auto shop and it just stops there. With future work being proposed with the East Ranch Water Board for joint effort to provide water from Aurora, actually it makes a lot of sense to loop this section as we're providing water from the other side of town, and instead of having it come all the way through town and have to basically go up 665 and then down Westover, now I can go down 110, which is your main, will be your main in the future, and provide water to the outskirts of town to the north along 665. In order to facilitate that change, we do need to get a intersection, which is the Westover 110 intersection. There needs to be additional infrastructure installed to make that loop, and then be adding 400 feet of water main. The loop is adding 400 feet of water main to this intersection. What we propose is we provided a bid tab to Northland to request them to provide a rough estimate of what that cost would be. And based off of the discussions with them, it'd be approximately $33,000, give or take, it's an estimate, to establish roughly 80 feet of water main, establish additional fittings along the main in 110 to prepare Westover for looping. So this is setting you guys up for it when that Westover project comes, you can make that connection and provide water easily and efficiently to the 665 area to the north. So in order to meet the timeline that Northland's on as they're doing 110 first, we recognize this is a bit backwards. Typically, we like to acquire a change order or present you guys the solid number of what it is, but unfortunately, they're anticipating being in this intersection in about 2 weeks. So therefore, what we're requesting is pre-approval to work with the county on getting a change order issued. That will roughly be an estimate of an increase in the contract of almost $33,000 to probably $35,000. And again, that sets you up with an intersection ready for a loop for construction on North Westover in the future.
The loop only makes sense in like standard water flow, but for fire water flow, it only improves everything you can, because you're drawing from both directions. Yep.
And the other benefit is you will not have a line in town that potentially you can have water that sits at the end. Those are risk for contamination and other sort of things that can happen if they're not flushed out. So alleviating those in the city is always something that we recommend.
Anything to add to that, Director Barrett?
No, I'd like to see this go forward. The Department of Health is always pushing that we eliminate dead ends if at all possible. This would be back all. It would also set us up for if and when we do the Westover project, we'd be able to move the dump station that's currently in East Range Automotive Lot to a better location. So, I would like to see us do this.
Anything from you, Dean?
No, I don't agree with you, you have to roll with
Any other comments or questions from folks on the council? For either of the James?
I'll say I did bring a bigger map if you want a more full view of what that is, the handover that shows you so much.
So just quickly, the very first one that what we currently have.
Yeah, what you have in front of you in 3 pages is what you currently have. That's coming straight out of the first data system we have on the computer at the water plant.
So all of these are what currently reside there. Oh,
What currently is in the ground, yes. You can see on the second page, that's where it comes up to about where the hydrant is, shoots up a couple more feet and then shoots down the alley there. And then you have that one line as soon as you cross Westover, and shoots up across the parking lot of the post office there and up to Brian's Body Shop. Or, sorry, not Brian's Body Shop, but East Range Automotive, both of them are named Brian.
that's where it stops, right?
That's where it stops.
Then you said a dump station would be moved across the road.
That's a conversation we had when we were looking at Westover, we were potentially thinking of moving that RV dump station to, right there where the baseball field is, you got that entrance there on the lower level, and you got that gravel road that kind of loops.
Yeah.
We're thinking of putting it somewhere in there, because then we can tie into the water main, have water going out to there, and have a dump station there, shoot across to the sewer. We're not in any businesses parking lot. And we can make it a little bigger so people can more freely go in there, do the thing, get out. So.
Other questions? Hearing none, I will ask for a motion, to approve the change order.
I will make that.
We have a motion from Counselor Jarvis. Is there anybody that would like to second and support that?
I'll second.
We have a second from Counselor Matson. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Moving on to 11.3, Shannon Sweetie, DBA, Public Authority Facilities, Authorities Grant Enhancement Program.
So I can, yeah, so what this is, Shannon's gonna be up here at the next council meeting to speak to actually the funding for this road, because we're going over bonding for it, and, we need to take this step first, so we can get into this credit enhancement program, which is allows us more favorable rates when we get the actual bonding. For it, it's like he says, like $500 to be this. What he needs is the signed declaration resolution so that we can, officially be in that program and get more favorable rates in the bonding for these two road projects.
And I know he's done good work for us in the past, getting us different ideas for funding and costs and estimates of what it'll cost, so. Yeah, I think it would be, yeah, a good idea to let him go ahead with this as well.
This doesn't bind you to any, financing, it's just to get into the
In the
program,
program.
right? And he points that out in the letter. And like I say, you'll be up in 2 weeks after the top on the bond, which is going to be for folks to go one place on the road. Thoughts in there.
Well, after reading through, Shannon's paperwork and, everything that he had sent over, is there any other questions or comments for the team? Knowing that he's not Shannon Sweeney, and he will be coming up in a couple of weeks. Hearing none, I will ask for a motion to sign this declaration or resolution to enter the program.
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Counselor Graham. Anybody that'd like to second and support that?
I will.
We have a second from Counselor Jarvis. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Moving on to 11.4, Bolton Main Water Treatment Plant Expansion Engineering Proposal.
So in front of you, like we talked last time, we wanted to provide you with a estimated scope and fee for the expansion of the East Range Water Board project. So in front of you, you have a scope and fee that provides the projected workload based off of what the current project has established to date, to what White Lakes would need to serve its community. So specifically, what we've been looking and reviewing historically, or what's being done there today and what is required going forward here is. We evaluated and found that there's an additional need for a pump at the raw water intake structure. That there's going to be an expansion of the East Range Water Board treatment facility, which includes 2 additional treatment trains with rapid mixing, flocculation, sedimentation, and filtration. We'll have an expansion of the chlorine contact tank and fuel well, an additional high service pump for increased plant capacity. There is mechanical electrical system work across the facility, and along with that will be an establishment of a new distribution system that carries water from the treatment plant, well, the outskirts of Aurora, along 110, to the White Lakes Water Tower. That line would be approximately 15,000 feet. It would include a pump station to lift it, move it, and also a chlorine injection structure to treat prior to reaching White Lakes. As part of the service, what we would do is we would provide all preliminary and final design, preliminary engineering, excuse me, includes any sort of permitting work along with topographical surveys along 110. We include topographical surveys, which we do have a fair amount of the current water treatment facility. Final design will incur work from process, civil, electrical, mechanical, architectural, geotechnical, and structural design disciplines. So we include all that work as part of the scope of fee to basically establish the structure, make sure all the piping is interconnected, and provide water to White Lakes. We also include preparation of technical specifications and contract documents for bidding purposes. We'll be attending review meetings at discretion of the East Range Water Board and also to the City of White Lakes Council. We include preparations of final plans and specifications for the bidding process, like I mentioned, and then administrative bid. So that is going out for public bid once you guys have had a chance to review. In this, we also include grant applications for funding. So we would come in and work with you guys on submitting applications for PFA funding through the Drinking Water Revolving Fund and the Minnesota Department of Public Facilities and Authority. So overall, this is taking you from the very start of the project to contract administration, which is delivering the project with the contractor. Altogether, we estimated that a design fee of $1.5 million. But since we know the system and there's savings in the fact that previous efficiencies can be developed from the previous design, we're proposing a fee of 1.49 below the 1.56. This approximately is 8.4% of the construction cost, which we anticipate being from 16 million to 19.5 million. Where we're at with this proposal too is if you guys need time to look through this proposal, we talked internally, and if we had either a go or no go beginning of July, we would still have adequate time to make that first funding cycle. So if you guys need time to review this proposal for the next month, we understand it, and that is totally acceptable.
Anything to add again, Director Barrett, from you?
I think I've made my thoughts clear on that, operators before me, currently us as operators trying to make this water better. That's what all we can do. I think this would be the right step moving forward. So I got,
All you need to do is look in your toilet after you flush it.
yeah. Yep. And the maintenance issues we have, other contaminants they find in water as they get their sciences better. I mentioned PFAS being in there. Just our treatment costs compared to other towns of our size, we should be paying a quarter or less than what we're paying right now. It's pretty significant just to chemically treat it.
Being. And,
So this step needs to be done before we go full blown for funding, right?
Yes, in order to prepare applications for the drinking water revolving fund, you'll need to have project specifications and plans prepared. Most funding sources would like to see a shovel-ready project, as we call it, and this gets you to that shovel-ready state.
So this would be the big step in jumping on board with the East Range Water Project.
And as was previously discussed too, is then with that comes other responsibilities that are awarded as well with the East Range Water Board, that's having voting members, so. But like I said, if you guys would like to take some time to review this, like I said, if we received a notification to start design, probably the first or second week of July, we would still be able to make the timelines to provide funding document or funding applications, in next March, so.
Typically, we see funding for this phase of the project for pre-engineering, pre-scope.
So the way
This
that
is actually scope.
right, a lot of these, the engineering side of scope and feed, like in this case, a lot of times they're handled by acquiring either like a micro loan through like rural water or another loan, and then once you get to your funding package, you can roll all those engineering costs in. All the interest is reimbursable as well, so like that ultimately goes into your ultimate grant ask. And in many ways, you can knock off some of that interest that you made, because a lot of times you get a portion of that on grant, right, instead of having to pay all that. So that's typically how the drinking water revolving fund works, is you get a small loan for engineering, and then when you actually apply, then when you get your grant funding, it gets it rolled right into that one.
And Shannon's meeting was up here last week, we did start talking about this, and as far as funding routes, we did. If the worker council doesn't decide to go this route, which we really don't, but either way, we don't. And we just renovate that part there, if we see them on them, or either way, you gotta assume drinking water source.
And that's not good, and besides, what he's talking about, when you were mentioning the engineering costs and stuff, they've already got some of the engineering plan done. If we were to do this, they'd have to start from scratch and go into it, so we're not paying for the full work that would have to be done with this plan, just tying into that. And everything they've said up until now about the grant funding is that when you're tied into a regional system, you're better off getting. It's easier to get funding for that. The politicians prefer to spend their money that way than to do it. I think Brennan said here a few months ago that City of Cook actually got turned down. Trying to do it on their own, but either way, they're more apt to make the grant funding available for a regional thing like this, rather than us trying to do our own. And like you said, you end up with the same product, that we got, the same source.
So another good point to touch on too, is you think of maintenance. Right now, some breaks in the water plant, that's on us. It's not spread between anyone else. You join up with a system like this, now it's spread over.
There's three entities, huh?
Yeah, we just had a lift station pump go outside the water plant, that cost us 12 grand. It's not something we can just sit on, we have to fix it when it goes, so. Those costs would be spread.
So Shannon was also gonna do work on like rate analysis, and I'll be working with them on that too, to see at the end of the day, what's it's gonna cost the city of White Lakes. What's it gonna cost us in White Lakes? And that's what you really wanna know, like, it's something, and that's what we'll be working on.
Any other questions or comments from anybody on the council? So I guess another, piece of conversation with folks want to, go ahead with this now. I don't really see any reason waiting till July, but we can, if folks would rather do that. I just think with our experts saying we should do this, with the funding piece, you're more likely to get funding, we're hooked up with other municipalities. We have an aging infrastructure already, so we're gonna have to redo that at some point. And then will increase rates for residents, I mean, either we look at more or not. We'd be paying more with the same water we have now, we're paying more with getting a better quality of water. And again, the big cost factor with having to treat, Kobe that would still be on us with a new. Water plant of our own, so in my mind, I don't think there's any question that we should hook up with Aurora. And all the conversations I've had with residents about it, going door to door and over time as a counselor too. I don't think there was anyone that wasn't for hooking up with Aurora, just with the prospect of having a better quality of water. Obviously, the peaceable, the cost is of a concern, but I think the main concern for residents, kind of like I touched on, when we talked about this last, was paying more and we still having the quality of water we have now, or we can pay more and get better quality of water. Residents are just maybe more upset with having to pay more, but still having the quality of water we have now. Again, that's no fault of Jake and his crew, doing the best they can with what they're pulling from, and kind of the high costs that we're having, the two public commitments we have. Don't think we have much of a choice, but that's my kind of reasoning on things. Dave kind of provided his input. Anybody else on the council have anything to add or question? Is everybody wanting to move ahead with this tonight, or do we want to push it off to further in the month?
I would make a motion that we decide to do this now rather than wait. We've waited several months already,
Right.
and I too have had a lot of people in town tell me that they want us to get better water. A lot of them have mentioned they realize the cost of doing this, and if we had to do this, we still have the same problem coming through.
You're making a motion?
I'm making a motion that we go ahead and make a decision to work on the financing and for the engineering, what he's asking for right now.
I would second that.
We have a motion from Counselor Jarvala, to, accept the proposal presented from Jake from Bolton. We have a second from Counselor Hickman. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Well, it's very exciting. Thank you, Jake. Grant, it will be, appreciate that. Yeah. Will be a bit of a long process, but over time you'll see that, improvement in future generations. I think will be thanking us for the decision we made. So, great job.
Yeah, thank you.
Moving on to 11.5, resolution to terminate the extension of the declaration of local emergency. So on the 15th, I declared a local emergency, just with the fire coming closer to town. That just provided us with certain hours and left limitations on having to make decisions and waiting for companies and things like that. For supervisors, city administrator, myself to make certain decisions. And then we had the last council meeting, kind of wanted to wait on the funding piece of it. Talking with Dean and Tony, we already have funds that we would be getting, whether we were in this local emergency or not. So at this point, we're really not seeing any reason to continue with the local emergency. The fire has been contained, not really of a concern, as it was back on the 15th of May. So just looking at approval for this resolution to terminate the declaration of local emergency.
I'll make that motion.
Motion from Councilor Grant. Anybody got a second support that? Second from Councilor Jarvala. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to 11.6. Update on PDA contracts for administrator clerk treasurer search. So providing some background on that, the council had previously approved DDA to complete a search for a city administrator. They had a representative come to town and interview staff to see kind of what the city was wanting and needing from the city administrator. They took all that information, kind of compiled it into an informational packet, and we've gotten that in April. And at that point, Dean had gotten into his position. Was kind of diving head first into all of his duties, learning all the ins and outs of the position, all financial stuff, all the grants and things like that. So at that point, I thought he was doing a great job. And then just kind of the feedback I was getting from staff, Everybody was enjoying his presence, thought he was doing a great job too. So we've gotten that packet, I reached out to the DDA representative to see if the city could exit that process, if the council had wished to, or if we had to see that process to the end. So Pat, the representative who's kind of in charge with this whole process, he had shared that the council could end the process, at this point. And we'd be given the packet that he had made up so that we could use it, in the future if we wanted to. And if we exited without kind of moving forward with things, that would be 8,000. The whole process, if we continue to the end, would be 25,000. So if we ended now, we would be saving the city about $17,000. In kind of my conversations with Pat from DDA, kind of went on to explain that the job market as it is, if we had an interim administrator doing a good job, he recommended just ending the search and making this person permanent. So since that discussion, I coordinated with Pat, and he kind of provided a breakdown. So when he sent that packet, there wasn't any sort of like kind of range of what we would be paying that new city administrator. So he offered to do, so not adding on to that $8,000. So whether we chose to continue with him or not, he was going to look at what the different city administrators made around the area. I provided them with the various cities around the range that kind of similar populations, similar departments within the city, so ones that kind of represent kind of what White Lakes looks like. So he'd been working on that for a while. So I've gotten that back. So at this point, I can have that forwarded to the council, so I have that, so then everybody has that. So at this point, the process is just kind of paused until the council decides what it wants to do, whether that's to continue with the search or make something work with Dean and move him into a more long-term position. So at this point, with making an official decision whether we want to have Dean stay on or continue with that search, we can look at a future council meeting on making those official decisions. There's a certain steps we need to take before that. So that's kind of where that's at.
What's the city's cost if we drop EDA and some?
So if we stop now, it would be 8,000 per what Pat said, and if we stop till the end, it would be 25,000. So that's a savings of about 17,000.
Do you wanna take this on for?
One next question.
Are you willing?
What's but yeah, and so the further discussion.
Absolutely. We could come to terms.
Yeah. So that's kind of, there's some certain things we need to hammer out. So we'll be looking at probably at some point here in the near future, just to hammer out certain steps we need to take before that. So that's kind of where that's at. Just with me coordinating with Pat and then only being able to with the forum thing, we can't talk to counselors outside the council meetings, so. Or more than one. That's kind of like, some folks might not be normal with that. But I made it clear to Pat that this wasn't like a whole council decision, I just wanted to have all these facts before we started going one way or the other. So, yes, at some point here soon, yeah, we'll have a meeting to kind of make more concrete decisions with that, and then moving into a more.
Did Pat give us like a time frame when we have to decide, or?
So yeah, when I reached out to him, he didn't give a specific time, he was just, I was letting him know that, yeah, we're kind of coordinating with the council, with Joel, on kind of what our options are. So I've been updating him, as things progress, and I told him I'd let him know, once the council made an official decision. So at a future council meeting, like I said, whether that be a regular council meeting or a special one, we'll kind of have a more official decision, and I can reach out to him with that. So that's where that's at. Yeah, well, we can talk about the specifics once we get to other meetings. Moving on, 11.7, update on blight ordinance enforcement. Sounded like Councilor Ekman had some questions or comments or, things to bring up for blight or?
Yeah, I had a couple people like reach out to me that, about like complaining about your neighbor. You have to sign your name, like people want it to be anonymous, they don't want to get retaliation against, like, so-and-so has garbage or whatever. So I've had quite a few people want us to be able to anonymously fill out the form or just reach out to Jordan and say, hey, my neighbor has a bunch of garbage, can you drive by there and check it out, and then give them a ticket? I don't know.
But the city keeps it anonymous, right? We don't, Jordan doesn't go there and say, hey, Charlie next door called me, he doesn't like your garbage. I mean, we keep it anonymous, we don't
Yeah.
provide.
But
Yeah,
people
sure.
just don't want to put their name on
And I think that's an important step, is you have to claim what you're talking about, whether you're complaining or praising someone, you need to claim it. So I'm against being anonymous, I mean, it's anonymous to the homeowner. It's only valid through city hall, so Jordan can go and have a piece of paper and say, oh, here's the complaint for this address, and go check it out, so.
Could that homeowner do a data request to get that info or no? Like with the city, could the homeowner?
I don't think so.
There's always ways you can find information. You know, and it's just. A question I would have in that is that we've got this blight officer. And I know anybody else around, and Jill and I were talking about it earlier, you can drive through town. And you can choose and pick just by driving through town with blighted properties that exist
Yeah.
in town. With garbage, uncut grass, fences falling apart. Grass never being cut around the fences of the houses. You know, there's just a lot of that, and it's interesting to see the big. He was out apparently doing his job once the weather warmed up. But this is something that, why should a complaint generate it? He's being paid by the city, it's something that I would think he could be able to do on his own. And that's, I'm with Jill in that. I've had people ask me about that, and they don't want to turn anybody in for fear of retaliation, because if they turn somebody in and say, well, this neighbor of mine, and you know, like Brent said, that if they could file any request for information, and they find the name on it, then that creates friction and problems with other people.
But is that a public data request they can,
I do not know.
yeah, like, I don't know if Joel or Dean knows, like, is that part of public data, is who made a complaint for a blight?
Their state, I'm aware.
Yeah, that's my initial thought, looking into it more specifically, is that it would be considered by the city as private data under the data request statute, right? I think that would be protected from disclosure, at least the name of the reporting individual. But most cities don't allow, and I think for a good reason, anonymous blight complaints. Because that is a greater concern there is that it would be subject to potential abuse by people. But yeah, obviously docs and something for blight complaints.
But then again, on the other hand, devil's advocate here, if the blight officer was to drive by. With a report of garbage on the deck or uncut yard, and drive by, you can see. Whether or not that's actually there. You can drive all around town, you can see a lot of houses up through there. They are what they are, you know.
Well, let's say somebody wants to complain about our blight officers mothering. Like, how does that? Would he be like, hey, your neighbor complained about that, you know? That's just like, no.
But does the blight officer see the signature on the complaint from the people fill out? Or do we just provide them a list of, hey, check out this address? Yeah, and I agree with Dave too, you can see some of it, all of it shouldn't come based on complaint. Like the employee should be able to see, you know, what's going on in town. But I think people are free to make complaints if they want to, whether it should be seen or not, so I think there are two separate issues, whether the job's being done. Or whether they can complain anonymously, I think they're two different topics. You know, going on, but.
Because he's getting paid to drive around it anyway, I mean.
Yeah, these are all driver roads, these are like.
And that's when I talked to them about the process, because I wasn't super in the know when I first took on this role, like, what is your process for identifying what is and isn't blight? He said a combination of people making complaints and him driving around town is how he identifies what is and isn't blight. So that's kind of, I think the process that's typical for blight officers, whether they are driving around town or not, it's a separate issue that the employer or us would follow up with them about whether they are or doing their job. And
We've talked about here before that there are some people that have had the reports on it. He's ticketed them, they paid it, never did anything to the situation, they rather just paid it, fine and go on.
Then you'll get a second offense too.
Yes,
And then.
exactly,
third,
but they said that that's the pattern,
Yeah,
that it just keeps rolling on.
But what happens when they don't pay any of them, like? There's some houses in town that are notoriously gonna have 17 cars in the yard and garbage and. I know Becky said in the past it's getting tacked onto their taxes.
We can hire somebody, I believe, if it's like any other, we can hire somebody to clean it and put it down in their assessment.
Well, they've mowed lawns like that, you know, before.
Yeah.
They've gone in and mowed lawns and then assessed the property.
They've towed vehicles out of yards, they've done, if it gets to that point.
Public Works has been at, I would say, 6 residences over and over and over, exerting a ton of manpower and resources, cleaning them up, and within a couple of months, they were the same. For those same 6 houses, it's all using bad.
but then on the other hand, you can't just ignore it, you know, we have a blight ordinance, the neighbors want it followed, so you can't just say, we tried and let it go. Cause then that's what everyone would do, so you do have to enforce it, and then I think ultimately you just add it on to their. Tax roll at the end of every year, like we do for other unpaid. Fines or services.
I mean, to go back to the kind of original thing about this, about the anonymous thing, I guess my opinion is. If that is considered private data, and let's say somebody wanted to, went through and did a request. And we,
Black ones.
what's the word I'm looking for, redact,
Yeah.
redact the name anyway, then to me, it's still an anonymous report.
Yeah.
In my profession, outside of being a city council member, we get anonymous reports all the time. And as much as they're anonymous, the name's still there. We just don't tell people, oh, your neighbor's the one that called it in. I mean, it's, to me, kind of like, Joel said was, if it's somebody that just starts just doing it to do it because they can hide under the fact they never have to use their name. I don't think that's really fair. I mean, at least that way. Let's say it got to the point of law enforcement or a harassment type thing, law enforcement could come in and see who it was because they can look at that information. But I just, I would be against allowing, when it comes to especially blight, I mean, an anonymous report. Number one, chances are the person's gonna know what neighbor probably doesn't like their stuff. Is probably gonna retaliate no matter who they think did the complaint or not. That's my opinion on it.
Well, this one person brought up that they know that people in town have chickens. And it's kind of kept private, whatever, and only a few people know these people all have chickens. But they're scared to say something, put their name on it. And have to come back to them. Since we have an ordinance to not have chickens in town.
Well, I think I just don't stand by people, if you're anonymous, people are very loose with their words and opinions when they can be anonymous, they're not always factual, fair, or. You know, sometimes it is just to retaliate, or neighbors don't like each other, so if you have something to say, good or bad, own it. Don't be afraid, if you're trying to follow rules, then own up to it.
But again, I feel like in this situation, they are still actually
It
really
is
being
private.
anonymous because it is private. The name is not given, it's just they have to put it down on their complaint. And I would hope that the blight officer is not going up to these people and saying.
You know, well, Jim's the one that called us and said that you have chickens, so we're gonna come here and take you for your chickens, but I guess I don't know. Chickens is really a blight issue, anyway, it'd probably be more like. Well, okay. Sure.
But maybe the city's, just, if it's not already, maybe it is, you don't give that person the name, we just give them a complaint. That they don't, even our blight officer doesn't see the name come in, you just have the address and the complaint.
If somebody,
We know that we took it legitimately and.
if somebody files a complaint to the city, I assume it's taken down on form.
It is.
Is a copy of that form given then to the blight officer, or is it written down on something else that tells the blight officer the address, and then he does not see? I mean, so is there truly a disconnect or anonymity there?
I don't know what to follow up on that part of it, so I've seen all the forms, we had very few this year, maybe 2 or something.
This is the thickest staff I've seen.
Oh, no, I mean, the complaints.
Oh, okay.
Residents complaints, these are dry rounds.
You know,
Okay.
around and stuff.
Yeah.
I don't think we got this year, like, once that's 37.
I mean, it's the first time I've seen them send in a stack like that.
Yeah.
But maybe that could be our practice, where we actually redact the name before giving it to the blight.
That's why I'm asking, is it
Maybe that-
a disconnect with one form to another, or is it the same form and just? He's not supposed to give the name away?
That part.
I think if people were confident to make a complaint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They know that that's part of the process, they just don't want any retaliation, like. If somebody else saw it, or, so if we can let them know that, no one's gonna see your name on there, so if you wanna complain, complain.
And like I said, I understand where the punch, about 25 years ago, I complained about somebody with a park. And I suffered vandalism. I couldn't prove it, but I suspected
Figured, yeah.
who did it, because it happened days later. So I figured sure as shooting, it's the guy that I complained about.
How much does the blight officer make? Does he get paid like a monthly stipend or,
Hourly, just by the.
oh, so he just writes his hours down?
Yeah, because there isn't much going on during the winter, so.
It used to be a monthly stipend. Last year when the state of Minnesota proposed the ESSP thing, all employees, they're can no longer be recognized as a stipend employee. They had to all be switched to an hourly wage. The zoning officer, blight officer, all those positions. Tammy had to come up with a way that they weren't stipend. We had to switch them to either hourly or salary. And so now they all fill out the time card and get a wage for their job. It's no longer a stipend.
Is he under like a maximum amount of hours he can put in and?
Yeah, I mean,
No, I think they had an average.
it's busy now.
Like I said, winter is very slow.
Yeah. Over that.
And then people were, so with these compliance, these are just warnings, right? That the warnings
They're
that,
all the
Yeah,
first.
they're just
warning.
It says on there, if it's grass, they have 48 hours, if it's.
because people were very concerned about those, saying, I have to pay this fine right now.
No, I mean, it says right on. it.
Yeah, it says you have to
Yeah.
correct it within so many hours or days.
46 hours.
However, these aren't free either, because they cost about $5 from the animal. So if you was actually looking at some door hangers, so you could actually put write a ticket in the field and just hang it on the door or.
Yeah, that'd be less
Pay them.
costly for us, cause you have to get a sense of, so he gets a tracking, you know, so he knows they got it.
Yeah, those work really easy. So this was $5, that's 37.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So who, like with the chickens in town, that all these people have chickens. Who does that complaint go to, Jed? Or
Is that a plan, zoning ordinance, like the your
is
zone?
the zoning ordinance plans it, so does it go to the zoning board?
Ooh, that would be kind of zoning if they had chickens in their basement, they're doing something. with them.
I mean, that happens.
Oh,
I
Because
thought it was a mat, it's a zoning violation and that's the zoning officer, so I thought it was a mat issue. if it's a,
I think.
well, we said you can't.
You can't.
We have to stop it. Yeah, enforcement, I think it's a zoning violation. You're not zoned for
Oh, yeah.
animals of that nature, so that would be a, Matt Royce that would have to go in to address that.
I feel like that would be like a teamwork thing, like. Matt would maybe
Yeah.
enforce it and then Jed would collect the chickens.
Right, you have nowhere to take them, I would.
Well, why can some people in town have chickens and some cats, you know, and that's what's,
Yeah.
there's multiple people in town that have chickens, and so it's becoming.
That's the first time.
So yeah, that would be a, yeah, Matt,
Why do you think chickens run away all the time? I mean,
I haven't heard about them, just.
last year they were
I
all,
haven't remembered since like 3 years ago, when
Yeah.
my kid was involved in catching them with a net
no, my husband caught some last year.
last year.
So yeah, they shouldn't be afraid to report whatever, whether it's complaint or zoning, because.
Just like report them to the correct, that's what they were wondering, is like, who do you report the chickens to, knowing that there's like 4 people in town with chickens, like.
Well, if it's not floated or protected, they're gonna run.
Yeah.
Some district.
Is what I thought.
It's free in.
Maybe look into it more, who is it enforcement of that, I thought,
The blight and,
but.
we're going back to the old ordinance, if it's blight, it's your, your city police chicken.
But where do chickens fall under, are you
Chickens.
violating the zoning ordinance or a light ordinance?
Animals.
Or an animal.
Animals.
Golden,
Yeah, like who's.
Is it a PD thing, like, who looks into it?
Yeah, maybe to verify what department that complaint goes.
Well, I think you could call it, yeah, like you said, that's zoning, if it's chicken refuse, that would be blight.
But it's a woman.
If it's the chickens themselves, that's animal control. Get everybody involved.
So maybe if we get a complaint, maybe just inner city conversation.
Yeah.
Multi jurisdiction or,
Drop, and let's go do it.
multi-department stakeout, takedown of chicken houses in town.
I mean, maybe it's a letter from the city saying, hey, we have received a complaint, you must get rid of your chickens, or we need to send the animal control officer and the PD to your home.
I think it's just like the blight, so you wanna fight the blight stuff and say, oh, well, you need to cut your grass, but it's okay for you to have chickens.
Have we had chickens running loose this year?
Not this year, last year though, my husband got a couple roosters and brought them to mouth.
That was the roosters, because nobody wants to actually keep.
Nobody wants to keep the roosters in their houses.
Yeah, I guess if we get a complaint.
About people.
No.
No.
No,
Nothing, none of it, none of it.
so yeah, good conversations regarding blight. So we'll do some follow-up on some of those things, and then, if there needs to be some decisions made, we can, cross that bridge, then we.
So you may have to look at these two ordinances.
Yeah.
So moving on to 11.8, Minnicom franchise agreement. Sounds like this is a yearly thing that we've done since what, the 70s?
Yeah, I think we're back to doing so,
Yeah, anything
it's
that's
just renewal, no, I think we were just reading there's. A couple weeks ago, we know.
And we don't pay anything or
They-
just,
they
we just get money for it, even though cable's dying out.
The agreement is dated 24. We'll make that before they-
She updated her, did you know she's?
I just want to make sure that.
Okay. Yeah, she does have an update. She had to change it to July of 25, it was supposed to be done last week.
Any other questions or comments regarding the franchise agreement? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to approve this with the correct date and time, and then we'll go ahead and sign.
I'll make a motion.
Motion for Counselor Ekman, anybody that like to second or support that?
I'll second.
Second from Counselor Grams, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Last piece of new business, 11.9, American Bloom, June 25th event. Kenny, do you mind just giving like a brief overview of kind of what this is?
Sure, so, CN Railroad offers what they used to call a community beautification grant. Any town that has a CN Railroad track going through it is eligible to apply for a grant. They are now administered through a company or an organization called American Blue. That's why it doesn't say CN Railroad. But we applied for it last year, we got the grant. What they like to do is piggyback on projects like what we did over at our Midway, where we built a new pavilion, rehabbing something old, trying to make it new, and what they like to do is piggyback on a project like that and pay for stuff like landscaping, trees, shrubs, etc., just to kind of finish off the project and make it. We received a $25,000 grant. They are going to, Dean, Tammy and I did a Zoom meeting with Laura, the lady who's administering it for us. They consider all the money that we spent at the Midway last year more than enough to qualify for our 50-50 match, as well as the in-kind service that we're doing to do all the work for the stuff they're buying. We bought, as I said, 20 trees, a bunch of shrubs that are gonna go around the bleachers at the lighted field, as well as some other stuff that's gonna be down at the pickleball court, benches, etc. So we're buying stuff like that with their $25,000 donation, as well as a sign that's going to be placed. I have the sign already in my possession down at City Garage. They require us to put up a sign explaining the project, as well as with both the CN logo and the American Blue logo. They did allow us to put on the other logos of the people who contributed to the project as well. So I don't want to forget anybody here, but it was like the Chamber of Commerce, the Water Carnival Committee, New Range, Copper Nickel, they've all contributed to that project. So everybody gets their logo on the sign, we'll place the sign. I am saving one tree. On June 25th, they like to have a media day, kind of a ribbon cutting, if you will. They want, to take pictures, etc. So we'll have a day with gold shovels and one last tree being planted, and get the whole project kind of finished up in their eyes. And then there are future opportunities through that to continue in your community. I mean, you can plan another project, say up at the free fields or a playground or other places like that where they like to chip in. Dean and Tammy and I just finished up a thing for them last week. They like to know a lot of different things about their community and where you may be lacking and what needs to be improved, so they can maybe help us with those areas in the future as well. So we filled out that survey for them last week. I think it's due this week. But anyway, yeah, June 25th, we'll be having kind of a ribbon cutting, tree planting ceremony down there. I also spoke to the contractor who did all the rock work, down at the, new pavilion. They, built us some rock planters as well that are gonna go up front of the pavilion. They ran out of time and materials last year to get them done. I think I'll have them in our possession next week, and I will talk to Diane and Sue then. So then we'll be giving you some of that monies as well to get flowers for the new flower beds at the pavilion. Hoping to have it all wrapped up and kind of come together by the 25th. All that'll be in the photos and stuff that they want to take for that date. I think we didn't know if Laura from the American Bloom or if it was her responsibility or ours to reach out to different people around the area, media.
So they asked for all the information on all their contact information. It made it sound like they were going to, but I actually think we had.
So they prefer that we get a hold of like local newspapers, etc., possibly even a news channel, whatever, get some publicity out of it for them. That's what they like to see.
Right.
The mayor's presentation.
Yeah, mayor gives a speech, does a little barbecue at the end.
That'll be fun for me. But yeah, thanks for all the work with that. I think over the past year or two, I think the city's done a really great job of really making that area look pretty. So that'll be on the 25th at 9. We kind of, like Kenny had said, have a tentative schedule, and some next steps. So I've been kind of in the process of inviting, kind of local representatives. And then we can touch base about the different groups, so water renewable, chamber, the different types of folks that help out. But paying for it, so I guess on my end, just looking for an additional counselor to kind of help, staff and I, to kind of coordinate this event. Kind of looking at Jill or Sherry. At this point, I'll be, like I said, reaching out to those representatives. I was kind of stressing over the event being catered, but due to it being at 9, I was thinking that we could just do coffee and pastries. Don't have to worry about, doing like a full blown buffet or whatever. But just looking at that, someone helping with, kind of getting everything set up. Just kind of helping and Tammy and you know, just making sure that the event's all scheduled, have everybody invited, have, we have that like a microphone, and so just kind of helping out with planning.
And then I'll be going to the shelter kind of area.
Yes, down at the community building, right?
Yeah, so I left one spot I have marked right now where we are planting a tree, which is right out in front of the shelter. And where you park in the morning for the arts and crafts, so right there'll be one last tree, I'll save one, or that spot will have the whole augured in. So I think that's where all the photo pops will take place with the pavilion in the background. And people can walk around that and see what all we have there.
Yeah, Brandon, I can help with coordinate, like especially like getting the food there in the morning, from the concession stand at the school, I can get those coffee crafts, so. I have a bunch of those, like I can help coordinate that.
Not that I don't think, Dave or, Alfred Matheson would do a bad thing. But those were just the experts in kind of setting up for events and all that other stuff, and I didn't wanna, assign someone to it. So, like, both of them have busy summers, regards these craft stuff and sharing with water.
25th is a weekday, correct?
Right?
We leave for the League of Minnesota State Conference in the afternoon, that day,
But the
Yeah.
25th is a Wednesday.
so after that.
All right.
So yeah, I mean, any of the other counselors can help out with Tammy and, Dean and Kenny, but just a matter of counselors speaking outside of the meetings, just, I thought 2 counselors, so it's not a forum talking about stuff.
Sure.
But yeah, you guys can feel free to reach out to Kenny and Tammy and city staff to help all this stuff. Just can't talk to each other.
And you know, if anybody wants to volunteer to reach out to the media, we got the numbers are totally fine.
So yeah, just wanted to make sure we got that all set up, have a couple of weeks to set up for that. I think that'll be a good event. Any other comments or questions regarding the American Boom event on the 25th? Hearing nothing, no sort of this, decision we need to make on that. So moving on to adjournment, anybody like to make a motion to adjourn? So motion from Councilor Jarla, anybody that second from Councilor Ekman, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carried. Thank you.
This is Our meetings.
Yeah, I just see, oh, you ended the meal?